When we were talking about the name, some people were even worried it was maybe too strong. She is your neighbor. What about she could be your neighbor? It's not just that it could be happening to your neighbor, it is happening.
We're just gonna get set up over here.
People don't talk about domestic violence. They don't talk about women's shelters. You kind of knew it happened or these things existed, but it just was kind of under the radar.
A lot of people are still existing kind of in that shame and stigma that has surrounded domestic violence for so long.
Are you ready?
Yes.
Coming forward and telling your story is very intimidating. This is the scariest thing that's ever happened to them. It's the most intense thing that's ever happened to them, and one of the bravest things that you can do.
Okay, Colette, I'd like you to look right here at me. All right.
Back in 1997, I was almost murdered by my ex-boyfriend. I kicked him out of my house after 3 months of living with me, and he came back 7 months later and tried to kill me. He called that night to tell me he was coming to retrieve his things. At 11:40, he kicked my door down. I remember trying to get to the knife drawer before him. He took the biggest knife in the drawer and turned me around and slit my throat. I ran to my parents' house. I didn't make it there. He dragged me back, and he stabbed me 37 times. Police came. I was rescued, taken to the hospital, and after that was the trial. He got 9 years for attempted murder, 2 years for forcible confinement. He went to prison, and I tried to get on with my life. When you suffer trauma like I suffered, you already carry so much shame, and you feel like people don't want to hear it. They say it's been long enough now, keep going, forget about it. Society makes you feel like you've done something wrong because you didn't leave early enough or you didn't kick them out early enough. I never saw those signs because I didn't understand that, you know? When he would call me 20 times a day, I thought he was calling because he loved me. The one thing that I would have needed would have been a person like me to talk to.
I think there could be a misconception with folks thinking that if it's that bad, why are women not leaving? If there's bruises, that is what violence looks like, but essentially violence has many different forms.
We kind of see a mix of all types of people. At any time, we're either at capacity or very close to capacity, and about half of our residents at all times are children. There's no really one type of woman that this is happening to.
Even if you see news stories about domestic violence, like the standard stock image is always the same thing. It's usually like a woman leaning against a wall, her face in her hands, upset, you know, just depicting someone who's really broken. I think sometimes it's just too much to take, so it would make people turn away. We need people to feel like, oh, this is something I want to be on board with. This is something I care about. This is something I'm proud to talk about supporting.
Domestic violence has been about shame and hiding and secrecy, but it's just amazing, the strength of the people that live here and some of the stories that I've heard of. It felt like something that really I had to do, like that we had to do, that we had to share these stories to really change the narrative. And then we kind of talked about how could we do this? How could we share photos and show people in a different light?
We really wanted to do a campaign where people talked about domestic violence, understood what it was, and understood kind of how close to home it was.
They were talking about what she is. Like she's a mom, she's a sister. She's not just, a victim. She could be anybody.
We came up with the slogan, "She is your neighbor." We thought that really kind of represented what we were trying to get at. It's happening in your neighborhood, kind of whether you like it or not, and it's something we need to recognize and talk about. I think the podcast really did kind of bring it to life because people had the chance to tell their own story. You were brought right into it.
There are so many different aspects of these survivors that are so strong and so brave and so courageous, and we wanted to show them like that.
Could you start by sharing a little bit about yourself?
Well, I'm a child of domestic violence, we'll put it that way. That's really intergenerational trauma if we debunk it in a conversation.
I went back the day following. He was going to change, and I believed it.
You can cover your bruises, but you can't cover the way you feel.
And that's how insidious abuse is. It starts off with these underhanded compliments.
We had launched 2 episodes of the podcast initially at the same time. We immediately saw downloads skyrocket. We had survivors reaching out to us almost immediately saying that they had never recognized themselves as a survivor until they heard what had happened to them through the voices of other people.
They would say, this was so empowering for me, and I felt free that I could finally share my story.
When they take it back and share their story and their experiences in their own words, then it's theirs and it's their power. It's not somebody else's over them.
I think that's what took so long for me to get better, is because I couldn't share my story with anyone. I thought I was the only one. After 20-some years, I thought I was the only one that suffered this because I didn't hear of anybody else. I started sharing my story, and for the first time, I felt like I was being heard.
People say that when there's awareness, then action can follow. More people are talking about it, and awareness is growing. That's kind of the next step. We need to go into action.
It's been very, very scary for me, but I want people to look back and say, because of you, I never gave up. Because of you, I love myself more. And because of you, I asked for help. I know now that this is my mission and this is my purpose.